All right. So, yes, my name is Kyle Stockburger, and I am a filmmaker and writer based here in New York City. And first of all, I want to wish everyone a happy Pride, the official start of Pride Month. Yeah, I'm really grateful to be here and to be moderating this panel. This is not a paid advertisement, but I will say, the Astoria Film Festival is really, has really helped me a lot in my sort of burgeoning filmmaking career. I have a theater background, and I think the festival really empowers indie filmmakers, and I'm just excited for the people who are in this year's festival, and the people who've been in past festivals who've come back, and yeah, I think it's a cozy bunch tonight. So I was thinking, I've been on this, I'm a bit of a history geek, and one of my projects is sort of World War II centric. So I was thinking of like the fireside chats. So I figured, even though it's June and it's like 80 degrees out here in New York City, I figured we could just have a little fireside chat and just have a conversation and keep it fun and casual, and maybe we'll get controversial. I don't know. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our panelists, and you'll have to forgive me if I mispronounce names, and I'll humbly accept corrections. But we've got Liz Galilee, who
Galalis.
Galalis. Okay.
Siri thinks it's Galilee, so you're not so off base.
My French high school French coming back, but whose film Fence Sitter is in this year's festival, and we have Lisi Rohume.
Oh my God, that was pretty good. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
great.
that's me.
Who is a past festival participant, and who has a play in the Hollywood Fringe this year. So not specifically affiliated with the Astoria Film Festival, but we love and support indie artists.
But also affiliated through a filmmaker, right? So
yes,
a friend of a friend, which we're happy to get.
So on that note, I mean, I guess, I think my sort of thinking for tonight is, we could just do little brief introductions about, how we ended up on this Zoom tonight, and that can be creative life, little mini biography, yeah, what brought you here? And then I was thinking, we could talk a little bit about queer film, meaning of pride, and then go more specifically into your projects and talk about that. So with that, I will turn it over to Liz. Yeah, the mic is yours.
Sure. Okay. Hello. My name is Liz Galalis, she, her pronouns. I am primarily an actor and a writer, and Fence Sitter is my first short film. I didn't direct. I worked with a director who I met through the Women in Film Los Angeles mentorship program, Sydney. She might be here, she might not. We'll see if she pops in. And I'm really excited to be here. And what were your prompts again? There were
yeah, what brought you here tonight? So I mean, and I guess that's sort of a broad question, but like, you can give us little snippets of your creative journey, or just biographical facts, fun facts. I mean, if you like Great British Bake Off, whatever you feel moved to share.
Okay. I am here tonight because, again, I'm very excited to be participating in the Astoria Film Festival. I am a bisexual filmmaker, and I'm married to a man, so there's a lot of I like to be visible in my sexuality, because I feel like there's a lot of bi-erasure, especially when you're married to, someone who is heterosexual and the opposite gender of you. My film has some queer rep in it, both on and off screen. I think probably nearly every department head on my film is a queer woman. And then on screen, we have a gay male character who is about to become a dad. And I wanted to share and participate in this panel.
Great, thank you so much. I'm looking forward to hearing more about that. And Lisi, take it away.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm Lizzie. Yes, that is how many eyes my name has. I am from Estonia, which is a tiny country in Eastern Europe. I moved to Los Angeles like a year and a half ago, kind of closing up on 2 years. I'm a writer primarily. I've done a lot of screenwriting, some playwriting, specifically in Estonia in Europe, and now I'm over here, kind of in a way maybe like restarting my career. Just it kind of feels like that. But with this project that we're going to be talking about later, I'll be directing. I am directing for the first time ever. And it is very weird. I still struggle to call myself a director. I'm like, yes, I'm a writer. I can do that. But because it is so new, I'm like, yes, but I am a director on this play. But yeah, so just kind of coming from the other side of the world has been interesting, fascinating, like obviously cultural differences and all that, but I always wanted to be here in LA, so that is kind of a dream that has come true in a lot of ways. And yeah, kind of the same thing that Liz said. The project, the play that we're doing right now, it's just I have 4 actors, like they're all main characters. It's a kind of a not a twofer, but no, that's not a word. Fofer. I'm also like so excited because there is a gay character who's one of the leads, who's like shockingly based on myself because I also wrote the play. And it's really exciting to be able to be in a position where you get to bring those stories forth, and also you get to bring the team in. And we're like a tiny team of 9 altogether. But yeah, like I'm so proud of the diversity, and we have LGBT folks, we have BIPOC, and just looking at those beautiful humans makes me so happy. And so yes, and I did forget to say that my pronouns are she and her, and yeah, I'm queer and single, unfortunately. So good for you, Liz.
Single and looking to mingle. I'm with you on there. And I also forgot to mention my pronouns he, him. And the title of your play is "We'll Come Back to the Title. It's Fine."
Yes.
Okay,
yes.
Great.
Which a lot of people were like, is this a stand-in and you're going to be changing that? And I'm like, no, because it's a play within a play. So that's kind of the whole point. You see like 5 different rehearsals and people just like trying to go through the creative process and just like changing things up and an ensemble comedy. And that's kind of, yeah, that's why, because they never agree on a title.
Amazing. We'll look forward to hearing more about that later. So now, it seems like we're all multi-hyphenates here. I'm also, actor, writer, producer, director, all of them, because I think, that's sort of what our culture necessitates. But yeah, I'm interested in sort of, since this is an LGBTQIA+ panel and it is the start of Pride Month, I wanted to talk about just film and queer film. I mean, even though I have this background in theater, I'm definitely a cinemaphile, right alongside the theater. And I know for me that a lot of my identity was formed in the images I saw on screen, and for better or for worse. And queer film in particular like indie queer film, I think in the 90s into the early aughts, there was this kind of resurgence, or not even resurgence, but this sort of like awakening of queer film. And so I'm curious to hear how film sort of informed your queer identity, if there are specific films that speak to you, that sort of helped you in that, or yeah, just the role of film in general. And we'll start with Liz. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, I'd say for me, the lack of representation definitely made it difficult for me to form my identity. I grew up in the 90s, early 2000s, and there really was not much by rep. And so I think that the lack of seeing myself on screen made it harder for me to understand and come to terms with my sexuality. I'm thinking back to like what was on TV in that era. My parents didn't have cable, so it wasn't like I was stumbling on the L word late at night after they'd gone to bed. And my examples of queer women were like Ross's ex-wife who left him for a woman in Friends, right? And then also Seinfeld, George's ex-fiance who left him for a woman. And I really was not seeing myself. Probably not until I got to college and expanded my artistic tastes. But in terms of films that were probably like the first time I saw a queer woman on screen, I'd say But I'm a Cheerleader is great and really fun. And then I remember watching Kissing Jessica Stein when I was like a freshman in college. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because I think for me, one of the films that really, it was kind of the first time I saw like a gay character on film was this British film called Get Real. And it's like the nerdy journalism kid who's like, he's gay, and then he has this affair with like the hot rugby player, and it's just a little, it's a little ridiculous, but it was really like meaningful for me. And it was one of those like clandestine, like watching things at night after the parents had gone to bed. But it's interesting because I rewatched it a couple of years ago, and it's so laden with like shame, and this character is just like so tortured. And so I think there is lack of representation, and also negative representation can really have a huge impact, for sure. Lisa, what about you?
Well, I really want to highlight the role of film festivals in this, and specifically for my queer journey, because I'm from a small country and a small town, but the capital of Estonia is Tallinn, and it hosts the Black Nights Film Festival, which is one of the biggest film festivals. Like now, it has grown into one of the biggest film festivals in Eastern Northern Europe. And I very specifically remember seeing a film that was a tiny indie film that had this love story between two girls. And like that informed, so like that kind of helped me come to terms with my queer, or just like aware of it, and like find the, so it's like representation is so important like that, especially again, if you're coming from a small town, it's not like I saw it anywhere. So you don't see it. So you kind of assume, everybody is straight. I'm also straight. So yeah, I cannot just like stress how important film festivals are in that way, especially if they're going into like smaller places and they're not always in the cities and stuff. So I unfortunately, I don't remember the title of the film, but I specifically remember just sitting in the theater, and I'm like, and something in your head, and I'm like a little thing went off. So yeah, it's super important. And even I work with film festivals a lot. Like I'm a film festival programmer. I used to work for the Black Nights like later in my life. And then even here in LA, I work for a little film festival called the Asian World Film Festival that highlights Asian films. And it is so important. And I think specifically important to have queer people or LGBTQ people in the programming team as your moderators. So it all kind of, yeah, I see film festivals, and of course Astoria as well, just to have this panel. And I know in your programming you also like highlight LGBT content, so it is hugely important.
No, I love hearing that, because I feel that the whole reason you do this is for representation, not only for the filmmakers, but then also for the students that we work with. I keep telling them, like, let me help you get into this industry, because you are not the people who are supposed to be in the industry, and that's exactly who I need to have in the industry, right? So both, and I always felt it would be a very symbiotic relationship between the emerging filmmakers and the students that we work with, kind of to help each other make that progress, and helps, we need to move the industry towards more inclusion. It's not going to do it itself. It's just not. So I love hearing that. Sorry, I didn't mean to bust in, but
No, please. I appreciate that. And I wanted to acknowledge, David, I saw your comment in the chat, and yeah, I think maybe we'll have like a little open thing for questions at the end of the panel. But yes, I think,
and just so you know, David is a filmmaker in the festival this year.
Oh, well, yeah, yeah, I mean, look, in that case, Nina, chime in. I mean, like I said, fireside chat. So if anyone feels so moved, please feel free to join.
I have to say, though, you said you're a World War II buff, and literally right before you were coming in, I was telling Liz that the projection room at the Zucker is basically a preserved World War II film projection space. So they have all the like World War II projection equipment, like they didn't move it to the Museum of the Moving Image. It's still in the theater. So we literally have to maneuver around these like massive and like stick our little laptop on the digital projector that's there now. But it's, if you want to see it, you should definitely remind me, because it's pretty impressive. Like, I honestly think that's the best part of the theater is the projection room. Sorry, that's a little aside. I will.
No, I love that. And I mean, I'd love to see that. And that kind of like sort of brings me to my next, sort of going off of this idea of seeing oneself in film or not seeing oneself in film. I've been, I don't know why, 20 years later, I decided to watch Band of Brothers, which I'd never seen before, but it's obviously World War II, story of paratroopers. But it's interesting because I was watching it and I was sort of joking with a friend. I was like, well, there's just no queer representation. And he was like, well, you're just watching it because it's all these like soldiers. And, it made me think like, me, of course, as a storyteller, I start projecting my kind of narratives onto like, well, there was a look between the two of them that maybe means something more. And so, I'm kind of curious to hear, I also, I saw Liz, in your film, description, it's an elder millennial, and I identify as an elder millennial as well. But I think for people who well, I mean, anyone who came of age really before the last 10 years when we started to see more representation, I think there was a lot of this sort of like coding, or this need to kind of like see yourself. And so I'm wondering if there are sort of like inherently non-queer films that did sort of speak to your awakening or your queer identity. I think for me, I think of like the Scream series, which were written by a gay man, but which I didn't know at the time. But I always sort of like identified with Sydney. She was this fighter and this survivor, and that idea of being faced with a foe and having to overcome that. I think as someone who grew up in a conservative suburb and being bullied, like that was very empowering. And then even thinking of like Indiana Jones, which was like that made me feel things in my body, and just sort of so yeah, I'm just curious to hear if there were sort of quote unquote non-queer films that spoke to your awakening, either as a queer individual or an art maker. Yeah. So Liz, take it away.
My brain keeps going. You're asking about films. My brain keeps going to TV. I think I watched way more television than movies when I was young.
Yeah, go with TV. Yeah, any media. We're media friendly.
And I think all of my favorite characters growing up were kind of queer coded, like Spinelli from Recess. If you're familiar with the animated Disney Channel show Recess, was it Disney? I don't know. And then Pepper and Annie. It's one of those things where like before you know your sexuality and then you figure it out and then you look back and you're like, oh, okay, that's why I was kind of drawn to those characters that aren't, written as gay, but
I think Daria, the MTV show, was
I never really watched Aria, but
was
yeah.
the only character I think I've ever related to. I've never related so much to a character, and again, not explicit, but
Mhm.
more or less. There's actually a lot of fan fiction about her and her best friend kind of growing up and having a relationship, but they didn't do it on the show. So
Love that. Lizzie?
Yeah, I'm going to TV as well because, and I think there's a specific reason for that. I'm 38, so when I was growing up and like maybe in my 20s, I don't think there were a lot of films that were even like female specific enough for me to kind of be like, yes, this could be something here. So TV had more of that at that time. And I mean, bless the Estonian broadcasting, because they were showing Buffy the Vampire Slayer and like Profiler, and I was watching Buffy. And again, it's one of them is just like having a woman, like a complicated heroine who is a woman. And then of course I was totally rooting for Buffy and Faith. I just didn't, I didn't really know at the time why, but unfortunately that never. So many dreams that you wish for to happen in TV shows and films, and they never do. So yeah, that one, and then later it was like Alias, like the J.J. Abrams series with Jennifer Garner. And again, it's not like they had a lot of queer characters, but just like having a woman in the lead, and there's just, yeah, even that is kind of empowering and helpful in terms of identity.
Yeah, and that kind of brings me to something I wanted to bring up, was this idea of and you both sort of mentioned it, but representation off screen, and how that affects what's on screen. And I mean, I think in some ways it can be fairly, it's like, well, obviously it's just more authentic. But I'm just interested to hear about, yeah, your experience of that, why it's important to you, and how you think it affects the work that's the finished product. And anyone, yeah, feel free, Liz, chime in.
Yeah, I think if your goal is authenticity and authentic storytelling, it's so important to have as many voices available to you, because one person's experience in an identity is not another person's experience in that same identity. And I know an example, I'm not a gay man, but I cast a gay man in the gay male role, and I had written a line where it was just like a throwaway joke where he was like, I went to bull night last night at this bar or whatever. And he was like, I don't know what that is. And I was like, you know what? I don't know what that is either. I just Googled like gay male terms. And he was like, let's make it bear night. I was like, okay, bear night's fine. And he like helped me rewrite that line. And that's why I think authentic casting and authentic creative team is so important.
no, I say too, I think when we, like what you were saying, Lisa, about how the programming, like if the people doing the programming aren't diverse, the programming is not going to be diverse. And we've seen that 100%. And I did it because I just was sick of being in rooms where it was looked one way or felt one way. And I really made an effort to pull in people of just have a whole diverse group for disabled, BIPOC, LGBTQIA+, etc. Male and female, there's such a difference. Like the choices for best drama, let's say, are so different between the men and the women, the straight people and the not straight people. You know what I mean? Like the choices made on the programming side by the judges based on it, you could see it. It lines up very much with their identification, right? So it's absolutely critical to have a lot of people in there. Sorry, I meant to say that earlier.
I totally agree with that, and what Liz was saying as well. It's, yeah, you want to surround yourself with people, and even, yeah, if I as a queer woman write a queer story, then it's still a white cis woman writing this one story. So you never want to be in an echo chamber, and you do want to just be listening and changing things. So yeah, even with the play now, there's like like a Latino character, and then I have a Latino actor, and then you just listen if they have notes, and you kind of, because the whole goal is to make it more inclusive and better. So I totally agree. But just coming back to specifically film festivals, I will also say that, and it even matters down to the moderators that are chosen. And very often I go to film festivals and just the moderators aren't, you know, they could have, just because of the sensibilities are different. I went to a screening a year ago. It was a great film, a French film, I believe, called Happening, that was doing like a lot of festivals, and that was about abortion, and stunning film. And the moderator was a white man, and he was a good moderator. But even just like as I'm in the cinema after finishing this film, like just visually seeing him there, there's some sort of conflict within me, because I feel like could we not have, and again, the movie is so much about just like the kind of the sisterhood and womanhood and abortion. So even that, I wish people thought about it a little bit more, and not to like throw anybody under the bus, but it was like an LA Times screening. So it's even like, I wish people thought about, because there's different sensibilities. And again, it was a wonderful Q&A, but I don't know, to me, I'm always like, I feel like it could have been better if, you know, if you had somebody else asking the questions.
I can't tell you the number of, like, you know, Juneteenth panels or like moderated by some white person. And I'm like, this is ridiculous. You know, like, why? And I remember asking some of our board members who are Black, can you moderate? And they were like, I don't know, I'm a little nervous. I'm like, well, I'll be there to back you up, but I'm like not showing this face in a Black panel. Like, that's ridiculous, you know, and I don't understand how people do it and think that that's not awful. And same with any other misrepresentation, if you will.
Yeah, it's so funny. I think it might be a nostalgia thing, but this was during COVID. I went back and rewatched Mona Lisa Smile, which, you know, the Julia Roberts film, and it's like these women empowerment, and I was like, something about it just rang insincere, and I watched, and sure enough, it was produced by men, directed by a man, written by a man, and it was just like, oh wow, okay. You know, and that kind of brings me, I guess this is like the hot button topic. I always see this on queer websites, you know, where it's like, so-and-so actor chimes in on the like straight actor playing queer actor debate. And, you know, I think it is an interesting question, because I think for me, you know, as an actor, I'm like, well, sure, you know, people can play whoever, but I know that it is meaningful for me when I see an actor who is queer playing a queer role. And so I'm just sort of curious on your thoughts on that.
Yeah, to me, authentic casting is very important. I'd say 99.999% of the time. There are just certain nuances that you understand having a certain lived experience that can bring so much more to a role. And I find that when straight cis actors are playing queer, gender nonconforming characters, they tend to fall back on stereotypes for their characterization. And that sucks. And so I think it's a very, very, very fine line. If you're casting a straight actor in a gay role, are they playing the gayness, or are they just playing a human existing in this story and they happen to have this identity?
I will say that I do love to see the other side of that. Like the example that comes to my mind is, like, I loved Neil Patrick Harris playing the womanizer and the ladies' man in How I Met Your Mother. So it's just, I don't know, there's something empowering even about that. So I don't know, it's kind of, you know, so they're not pigeonholed the other way and get to play all these other roles. I just find that is important to mention. But yes, I agree, there are some, I haven't made up my mind about this, but I definitely agree that sometimes there's just something you can feel as you're watching it, when you're like, it's not a lived through experience. It's not a lived in experience. So I agree. But yeah, I haven't, because there are moments when it works. So yeah, I'm kind of haven't made up my mind.
I think on the point of, we were talking about seeing yourself being represented. And I think it's important for youth, especially, that it be authentic. Do you know what I mean? Like, I think it can't be, and I work a lot with disability rights organizations, especially disability in the media. And I 100% there am like, no, like, not only do I want to see it portrayed correctly, I also want people to have that role model. But and then in addition, I want to make sure those actors get work, right? Like they're the minority. They're like, they're oppressed, that they're not getting into the rooms as quickly as people with, as cishet white men. So can we please give those actors the roles, if for no other reason?
Here. All right. Well, switching gears now, I want to talk a little bit more about your specific projects in general, and just sort of, just give us an introduction to your project. And I'm also curious to hear sort of, I guess it's kind of twofold, but what was the creative seed that sparked it? And then also just like nuts and bolts, how did it get made? So yeah, Liz, take it away. Let's hear about Fence Sitter.
Okay. Fence Sitter is a comedy short about an elder millennial who has a pregnancy scare at her best friend's baby shower and totally ruins the vibe. And it follows Alice, who is our elder millennial, at Naomi's baby shower, and her best friend Ryan, who is her gay BFF from college. And Ryan is harboring a secret, which is that he is expecting a child via a surrogate. And Alice finds this out. This is kind of a spoiler, but she finds it out and she totally spirals because she feels completely left behind. And it is a story about a woman that doesn't know if she wants kids. I turned 30 and I got married, and everyone around me started asking, okay, when are you going to have babies? And I didn't know. I still don't know. It's such a huge decision. And I feel like everyone around me knew that they wanted kids or knew that they didn't want kids, but I didn't know anyone else on the fence like me. But it's such a common experience. And I wanted to make a film that portrayed that. So I wrote the script. It was one of those like lightning in a bottle scripts where it just kind of came out of me, and I sent it off to some friends to read it, and so many people were relating to it, and I decided I had to make it. So I actually self-funded this one. I had a little bit of an inheritance after my dad passed away, and he always encouraged me to make my own work. So I took some of that money and I made this film. I met Sydney, the director, at Women in Film LA Fellowship Program, and we totally clicked. And we just made it happen. We shot it over 2 days. We had like a 75% like female crew. I think 50% of us were queer, and it was an amazing experience.
That's awesome. That's beautiful. And I'm interested, we'll put a pin in this for now, but I'm interested to hear, because I very much identified with with the film itself. I've been at those parties before. It's a lot, but I'm interested to hear sort of what the response has been, both from people who have children and people who don't have children. So we'll put a pin in that, but we'll turn it over to Lizzie.
I just want to say congratulations, Liz. That's amazing. In 2 days, how do you film it in 2 days?
I had an amazing director and an amazing crew. We had to do 12-hour days both days. Next time I will build in more days into the schedule, but I had such an incredible crew that were so collaborative and passionate, and I couldn't have done it without them, obviously.
Yeah, that's amazing. Congrats. Yeah, I love that you say more time. I'm like, I'm constantly, every time we've been working over a month now, we've been working on this play, and I'm like, I just wish I had like one more rehearsal, like one more tech rehearsal. It's just like, give me more time. It just feels like it's not, it's never enough. I will say, because you asked, Kyle, the creative seed for my play is rejection. because I've been in this business for a long time, both in Europe and here, and being a creative in any industry, in any town, is so difficult. And I have so much respect for anybody who's like making films, making art, just freelancing. It's a lot of like false starts. It's a lot of, no, we can't do this. It's so much of like no's, and especially as the years go by, it's just like more no's. So I wrote the story, and it's interesting. It's very similar to what Liz was saying, because it just came out of me. It might have been one of the easiest things I've written, because I could just like hear the characters. It kind of like fell out of me, and then it was there on paper. And yeah, like I mentioned, it's a play within a play. So there's a queer writer director, an immigrant, super similar to myself in her life story, and she's working together with these 3 actors, and the 4 of them all together are trying to make this one action play work. So we see the scenes from the action play they're putting on, and then we see them having these discussions, and how to portray this, because the lead of the action play is this character called Tilda Minton, and then they're like, but who is she? I want her to be like a strong woman, and then I want her to be, at the start, like she's like too amazing, so it's like, let's temper it down. And it's like, even how to like portray a woman, or how to do it differently when that they've seen so far. So you can have like a lot of interesting discussions with that. But honestly, the main thing for me throughout this whole process, and just like why I wrote it's a love letter to creatives everywhere, because I have so much respect for that. And especially as I'm getting older, and especially when you're working on something and it's like, it's not coming together, but you don't give up, you kind of push through, and you keep going. Or even if you have 2 days to shoot a film, you do it. You could just be like, you know what, this is like too hard, or this is impossible, but there's a lot of like can-do attitudes that comes with the creative life. So yeah, that's what the play is. And yeah, and it's funny and silly and like, stupid at times, but at the core of it, that's what it is. Like, anybody who's just doesn't give up, I have so much respect for.
That I think that brings up an interesting point, because I'm also, I'm a self-producing artist, and I've definitely done the thing where applying for writing grants or writing residencies, or sending work out. And so I'm just, yeah, I think it's making one's own work is so huge. And I guess I think how it relates to these stories is, I guess I'm just curious about how why the necessity for making our own work, and how you've navigated that within this sort of like, not to get on my like Hunger Games soapbox, but like this capitalist structure. And has these projects sort of come out of a need to create that perhaps wasn't given to you through other opportunities, or how have you sort of it's like I have a full-time day job, and so it's like navigating the how do you survive and how do you make art. I'm just curious, so this selfishly, how the 2 of you have navigated that.
A lot of tears, a lot of, what am I doing with my life? Is this worth it? Yeah, it's an eternal struggle. I'll say that I'm very lucky. I'm married. My husband is also an artist, so we support each other, and also we split the bills 50-50. So like, speaking of finances, like that helps tremendously. And then it's the thing that I struggle with is, when we're doing indie filmmaking, it's beg, borrow, and steal, but I also want to pay people for their talent and their time. And so I paid everybody a little bit on my film, not nearly enough, not anywhere close to what they deserve. But that's something I struggle with, is just like being able to compensate people for what they're worth, but we're all just trying to make art. So I don't have any answers, just I empathize.
Well, I will again to talk about the importance of festivals, because my play is at the Hollywood Fringe Festival. And whether it's like a theater specific festival or a film festival, it's just like so hugely helpful, because obviously there's such a tiny percentage that comes out in cinemas or comes out in theaters. So just to be given a platform to either just submit or send it off, or in the case of the Fringe system, like I'm also self-financing this. And that has been the weirdest part of the whole process, is that nobody says no to you, because you register, you're putting it on, you choose the venue, you choose the actors, you're paying for this. And it's a bit disorientating, because you hear no all the time, and then suddenly you're like, oh, okay, it's like we get to do this. So I really want to highlight the importance of festivals like that, especially for marginalized communities. And it's been so great because Fringe hosts these participant events, networking events, and there's a lot of queer people there, and it's just such a joy to see that. And there's so many stories there that are not being told anywhere else. So yeah, I do want to highlight that. But coming back to the finances, yeah, of course, it's so hard. Like, you have these long days, and of course there's moments when you're like, why am I doing this? Why did I voluntarily decide to direct the play, an hour-long play? Like, what is wrong with me? And I have moments like, should I just, and of course there's tough days, there's stress. It can be very overwhelming, and there have been moments where it's funny, my first thing is always like, okay, I'll just go to the airport. I'll just go back. That's like my go-to in my head. I'm like, you're fine, just go to the airport. And yes, I cannot stress this enough. It was super important to me on this project. It's so funny that you say that, Liz. Nobody worked for free. I was like, and again, of course, I paid them very little, just what I could, but that was like my main thing going in. Nobody will work for free, because that's also one of the things I hugely dislike about this industry, and the kind of all these internships and that are unpaid. And I've done so much unpaid work in my life, and it's just, it's not okay. And it kind of means that there's privilege there, that they are able to work for free. So I think we need to be hugely mindful of that. So yeah, I'm so glad to hear that was, because yeah, that was totally my thing as well. And I said from the start, this is what I can pay you. I know it's not enough, but nobody will work for free.
And I think on that note, I will say, as someone who is a burgeoning filmmaker, I mean, I've made a film, I'm working on my first feature now, and I've done a couple of, my short film was in a couple of festivals, including the Astoria Film Festival, and I found it very empowering to connect with other people who are sort of at the same level and doing the same thing. And I remember I was at one sort of like networking event it was the New York City Indie Theater Film Festival, and it was sort of like their whole thing is people who have transitioned from theater into film. But I was talking with some guy, and I was like, oh, I always get a little like cagey at networking things, and he was like, I don't see them as networking, I see it as like friendship building, and so yeah, I just want to, I guess that sort of leads me to this idea, and I've even, Marta Marquez, who's on the board at the Astoria Film Festival, has been a huge ally and advocate for me. So we'll shout out to Marta. But yeah, so I'm curious about like just your experience. Liz, I don't know. I think this is playing in other festivals, and so I'm curious. Have you had the festival experience? Have you found cheerleaders? Like, where do you find the kind of inspiration to keep going and the hope? Like, how do you keep going in sort of the face of all these like financial issues, gatekeeping, all that stuff?
Yeah, so we had our premiere last month at New York Cinefest. So we're just hitting the festival circuit now. And it was many rejections, which were so disheartening. And I'm sure all of you can relate. When you are spearheading a project, the rejection feels so much more painful. Like, I'm an actor, I get rejected all the time, and I don't care if you don't want me for your like Tide Pod commercial, whatever, that doesn't sting. But when like I wrote this and I acted in it, I produced it, and I'm marketing it, and I'm doing the cover letters for the festivals, oh gosh, that is so disheartening to get rejection after rejection. And finally getting to premiere the film and see an audience response has been so inspiring, and it keeps me going because so many people have come up to me to tell me how much they relate to my film. And I know you had asked earlier if there's a difference between parents who see it or people who aren't parents who see it. And the film's been like a Rorschach test, and people just see themselves no matter where they fall on the spectrum of parenthood. Parents who have seen it have said, oh yeah, I like, when you have a kid, all you're really talking about is diapers. I've been in those conversations before. And people who know that they definitely don't want kids are like, hey, that line about how like you lose your identity when you have a kid, I feel that, and that's why I didn't want to have a kid. And people in between, and somebody who is going through an IVF journey came up to me and told me about how much they related to my film. And that's been really cool. And just seeing how my work can speak to people and put something out into the world that didn't exist before keeps me going. And my new mantra, and I'll share this with all of you because I think it's great if you're an artist, every time I try to share my work or speak on a panel or go to a networking event, I tell myself, nothing to prove, something to share. And that's been keeping me going as well.
I love that. I absolutely love that.
It's not mine. I heard it somewhere. Can't take credit for it, but
we need stickers.
Yeah.
But yeah, as a mom who didn't have a child till I was 35, and who didn't know if I really wanted a child, and mostly because I didn't want to live in the parent world. Like, I wasn't against children, I was more against parents, if that makes any sense. And I still am a lot. Like, I kind of still walk that fine line and try to stay in the, and to be honest, most of my friends are not parents. But anyway, I still am trying to figure all of that out, but I still have a kid. So, and he's great and I love him very much. But yeah, I don't have any answers either. But as a parent, I related to it too, because I waited a long time. I wasn't sure if I wanted to do it. And then I was like, I better do it now or I'll never be able to do it. Right? Like, you have that clock issue. So yeah, I very much related, having been there. And all of those events are just disgusting. Like, I was like, when COVID hit, I was like, can we just do this always? Like, can I zoom into your wedding, shower, birthday party for the rest of my life? Because that would be perfect.
Right.
So anyway.
That's awesome. I'm so glad you're related to it. That's my favorite thing to hear.
And not to take up too much time, but another thing is like what you're saying, how both of you said, like, this just kind of poured out of you. It like the lightning, or like, it had to get out of you. And I think that's when the stories reach the people they're supposed to reach. It's like for whatever you believe, like the universe was like, you've got to tell this story because these people need to hear it and it will help them, right? And that's the reason I love festivals, because it's those stories, right? And that's what, with us at least, that's what we look for, and that's what kind of, floats our boat, if you will. It's not like, oh, they used a red camera, oh, they like, it's like that story that just had to be told and now is going to influence so many people. Like that's glorious.
Yeah, and I will say it is like communication is key in just like keeping going, and it is like, I'm a huge believer in it is okay to give up for a day or for a week sometimes. Like that is totally fine. I want to spread that word. And like going to these fringe events that had other fringe participants hugely helped me, because I would go there and be like, I don't know what I'm doing, and what are you doing with this, and how many programs are you printing? And each week, like, there was just people there who were so kind and supportive and loving, and who were just feeling the same way, and everybody was honest about it. So like, it was very kind of reaffirming to be like, oh, okay, so we're all doubting, and we're not really sure what we're doing, but we're still doing it. And I think that's important to mention. And one of the things I found with directing, I didn't know it's this hard. Like I'm like, could there be a sticker with that somewhere? And maybe it's super obvious, like Kyle, you're saying you're going into your feature, so I don't know, but just for me, it was like I was kind of shocked by that. So I think it's really good to communicate those feelings. That helps. And of course, just having people around you, or just my family. Like I've had panicky days where I just call home and my parents are like, well, okay, yes, but that doesn't like mean really anything. So I think just having this network around you, be it your family or friends or just like other filmmakers, it's hugely important. And then lastly, I would say, of course, it's just looking at other types of art. Like I'll go to a museum and be inspired, or I'll watch a film and it inspires me. So those all together keep me going.
Yeah, a couple things came to mind. First, I do want to point out just why World War II keeps coming up, but I no spoilers, but I really, Liz, I loved your little World War II reference in your film. Yeah, I won't spoil it because it's such a great reveal. It's such a great joke, but it's really funny. Not that World War II was funny, but the reference in the film, of course. And yeah, it's Lizzie, hearing what you say, it reminded me of I was at this sort of filmmaker mixer, and I remember saying, like, I don't know how to make a feature, and someone was like, well, you know how you learn, and you make a feature. And I guess I'm lucky because my director, who is someone I went to school with, but he's like very punk rock, and he's like, because I looked up, it's a queer pagan holiday film. And I looked up sort of like the budget for holiday films, and it's like $2 million. And I was like, I don't know how I'm going to raise. He's like, we don't need $2 million. We just need a camera and we just need to shoot it. And I was like, okay, you're right. Like, this is what I need to hear, because I think there's a lot of that just sort of like, oh, if I don't do this, or if I don't have this, and it's like, no, you just do it. You figure it out as you go. And that's how it's part of the process as an artist. Okay, so we are nearing the end of the hour, and I do want to open it up to questions. I know we've got David and Ruben and Nina. If there are any questions you'd like to ask our filmmakers and our theater makers before we close out.
I mean, I know that Ruben is looking to be a writer, so I guess for his sake, I would ask kind of when you approach the writing process, like, what does that look like for you? Like, do you set aside times each day? Is it just kind of when the spirit hits you, if you will? Like, how do you approach your writing process?
I mean, if you're waiting for the spirit to hit you, you're never going to write anything, in my experience. Just my experience. No, of course, you set time aside for it. And then there's like, this is when my house is the cleanest, is when I've set aside time for writing. And then I do absolutely everything else instead of writing. But again, it's a process. Like for me, it takes a minute, and there's still something happening in the back of your mind, even if you're not actually physically doing the writing. But still, I still have to sit at the laptop and kind of be with it, however little. And I do want to say, because I've seen this before, and I remember this used to give me anxiety, because there's a lot of people out there saying that you have to write every day. And there is no way I can write I don't know, my life, there's just, I can't do that. So I don't know, I would just like to say that has not been my experience, and you can still write, and I'm 38, you can still create your art whenever. So whenever you can make time, and sometimes there's kind of lived experiences you have to go through until you actually arrive at that story that you're wanting to tell. So yeah, that's my 5 cents on that.
That's wonderful. Liz, do you have advice?
Yeah, there's a quote, and I don't know who said it. It's a famous quote. Somewhat famous, I don't know. There's some writer has a quote that is, I hate writing, I love having written. And I relate to that greatly. So in addition to setting aside time to write, and which I fail at many days, I have ADHD, so I kind of need to wait for a little spark of inspiration. And then once I get that, I have to take advantage of it and sit down and write as much as I can. Just know that slogging through a script is normal. It doesn't mean that you're a bad writer. It doesn't mean you should give up on the idea. Writing is hard. There's a lot of self-loathing involved. And that's okay.
I love that. Yeah, and I think too, to hone the point that you guys are all making, produce your own work. So if you want to be a writer, start writing, keep writing, write more and more and more, like whatever you can do, write. And if you want to be a filmmaker, make films. Like you will only get better as you go along in the process of either of those.
And also say finding a writer's group or even an accountability buddy is so helpful, just to have some people to share your work with, to read their work, read lots of scripts. That can always inspire you and inform your own work. Building community, always.
I love that.
And I also want to stress, just write the next thing, and then write the next thing, and so on.
What if you have like 20 bits of things that you put together? Asking for a friend.
I have like 3 projects that are sort of like taking up real estate in my head, and I kind of just go with, I sort of see it as like the muses, and I'm like, okay, who's tapping my shoulder? You know, like who do I need to give attention to?
Well, thank you everyone so much. I really appreciate you sharing yourselves here tonight. It was wonderful to get to know you better. I appreciate you being on this panel, in this festival. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Kyle, for doing a beautiful job of guiding us. Appreciate you very much. And I'll let you end.
Great. Yeah, thanks. Thank you so much, Nina, for having me. And I guess, yeah, 2 things I'd love to end with is A, where we can see your work, and B, one thing in your life, in your world, in your art that's inspiring, that's feeding your spirit. I can start if you want. I guess so. My short film Tom's Bench is on YouTube. After we did the circuit festival circuit, we just decided to put it up on YouTube. So it's there if you'd like to check it out. And my holiday film Bouche de Noël, we are going to start filming in January, February of next year. So that'll be coming to a festival near you at some point. And like I don't know where I've been hammering this home, but like soldier stories are really inspiring me right now. And I don't know, it's because I have a very complicated relationship with our country right now. I won't get into it, but I'm finding it very captivating. And I think one thing I've learned in the creative process is I don't question what inspires me. I just kind of lean into it and see where it leads. So I will, yeah, that's my 2 cents.
Do you want to put a link to your film in the chat if you have it handy?
Yeah, I can do that.
You can check out my film Fencer at the Astoria Film Festival for all of June. And then in person June 11th at 12:30 p.m. And hopefully in more festivals to come, and then eventually an online release. But you can follow me on social media at Liz Galalis, or you can follow the film on social media at Fencer Film on Instagram to keep up with the updates. And what's inspiring me these days is the library. I love my public library. The fact that there exists a place that is free, that has endless stories in many mediums, is amazing. And I love to just browse the stacks and see what catches my eye and take a little bit of inspiration from whatever I choose to read.
That's amazing. I also want to give a shout out to public libraries because my Wi-Fi stopped working, and then I was at my public library and they were like, oh, did you know that we give out these hotspots? And they gave me a hotspot for free for like 6 weeks or something.
Yeah.
So it's, yeah, like all power to public libraries. Well, obviously our play is in Los Angeles only currently. So yeah, it's at the Zephyr Theater. Throughout June, we have 5 performances.
Will you be recording it?
Yes, yes. At the end of June,
We'd love
we will
to
be
see it.
But I don't know if we're releasing it. We haven't figured out if it's going to be good enough for a release, basically. Not that the story, but just the technical quality of it. So that's why, because we won't have time to film it for camera specifically. So that's, I'm still trying to figure that out. But yeah, obviously we'll come back to the title. It's fine. It's like on every social media platform. We've shortened it to WCBTTT, if that makes it easier for anyone. And yeah, inspiration wise, it's just, honestly, right now, it's just like in my team and the people around me, and, just the fact that the actors show up to rehearsal every day and they want to be there and they're giving their time and talent. Like, that inspires me. I don't take that for granted. Yeah.
Great, thank you so much, Liz and Lizzie and Nina for hosting us. And there are panels throughout the month with the online film festival, and obviously the in-person festival is the weekend of the 9th, 10th, and 11th at the Kaufman Astoria Studios. And more information can be found at astoriafilmfestival.org, and obviously Hollywood Fringe. I'm sure if you Google
You're so
that,
good.
Oh, yeah.
I wouldn't have remembered to do that.
I practiced with Marta. So
That's amazing. Thank you.
yeah. So that's my 2 cents, and I'll give it over to you to take us home and take us out.
Thank you. Thank you so much, everybody. I look forward to seeing people at the festival or in more online events. We do have a good lineup. So Respectability is hosting a disabled filmmakers panel. I've worked with them a bit, especially this past year. I was a fellow in their program. We have the vice president of Sony Television is giving a pitch presentation, like how to give a pitch, and he's the man. He knows how to give pitches, and he gets pitched to a lot. So kind of what he looks for in pitches. We have how to make a self-tape by an acting coach tomorrow night, actually. And then we have the All Festival panel on Monday that I'll be moderating with whomever shows up. Basically, we'll be happy to have you. And then the 6th is actually a conversation with a tech and intellectual property lawyer talking about how AI will affect filmmaking, or just a discussion about how AI might affect filmmaking, I guess, because we don't know yet is the issue. But so yes, thank you for being here. Hope to see more of you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
you.
everyone.
Thank
And
you.
much success to all of you. I can't wait to see everything. So, Lisi, I hope you get that to us, because even there's a theater here called the Chocolate Factory Theater, and they didn't have like they just kind of set up a camera to record everything and put it online. And it was interesting because I was talking to them during COVID. They were saying like their online archive was getting massive looks because of the fact that people were home and needed stuff to do, but they just did it to have like a historical log of all of the stuff that was produced there, and yet it still was getting attention and it was worth viewing. So
Okay, yeah, thank you, Nina. I'll check that out.
just in terms of you should film yours, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Thank you, everybody. Have a good
Thank
night.
you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Good
See you
night. Thank
soon.
you.
Thank you, Kyle.
Happy Pride.
Yes, happy
Yes.
Pride, everyone.